for the MPSC Assistant Town Planner exam. Now, as far as our syllabus is concerned, we've already seen that topics related to your basic theories of planning, policies, urbanization, etc. are expected. So what we are going to cover today is the basics of planning, right? Some features of Indian urbanization. Along with that, the part of evolution of planning legislation in India. So as far as the lecture for today is concerned, we will be looking at the basic terminology related to planning, classification of urban settlements, and then evolution of planning legislation in India. Now, many of you are from different backgrounds in terms of the educational qualifications. Some are from architecture background, some from civil, some from planning. So today is going to be only a basic terminology lecture so that we can have all of you on a same platform where it would be helpful to understand the next few lectures in a much better manner. Okay. So now in terms of planning, what do we understand by planning? Can anybody tell me what is your understanding of planning? You can type in the chat box as well. Is everybody comfortable with English and Hindi? Yes. Okay. Before we understand planning, now a lot of students have confusion between urban design, urban planning. Let us try and understand what is the basic difference between your architecture, urban design, and planning, right? Okay, Chandrima says planning is a process to improvise the urban areas. Yes, Anisha also says efficient and effective utilization of space. Absolutely. So we'll go right from the basics. Fine. Now, in terms of your architecture versus urban design and urban planning, if we see architecture is more at an individual basic level of your building level, right? So the major difference between these three is the scale at which you work. Urban design deals with more or less the spaces between buildings, whereas urban planning is more confined or more towards larger regions and larger areas. So for example, if you look at this image here, okay, let us assume this is a town that exists. Now, what is going to be the role of an urban planner or a planner versus an urban designer versus an architect? Now, as far as a planner is concerned, the planner has to work on this entire town with respect to dealing with the infrastructure, the services, the open spaces, the land use zoning. So that is what is going to be the role of a planner working at the larger scale. Whereas for an architect, what is going to be the role? Can anybody tell me? Yes. Architect is going to design at a smaller scale, or rather, can I say who is going to design these individual buildings that you have, right? Or maybe let's say this individual building. So it's going to be your architect. And when urban design comes into picture, right? It is what happens in between spaces, in the spaces in between buildings. So let's say there is this urban park or maybe your streets, the footpaths along your streets. So all of that, these open public spaces within this entire town is what your urban designer is going to cater to. And if you see the difference between urban planner or a planner versus a designer, is that planners work more on the basis of statistics and rational decision making, whereas for designers, it is also a part of, along with functionality, it is also aesthetics that is to be considered. So if we say planning is more or less an organized process of designing and managing your towns, cities to create much efficient and functional spaces and create a more cohesive relationship between the people and the places. And it is to enhance the quality of life of the people who are living or who are going to be the users for the particular place. Of course, you have consideration of your social, economic, and environmental factors as well. Okay? I hope everybody is clear with this. Now, moving on to the next basic terminologies, let us understand these so that when we are going to discuss about your legislation, evolution of planning legislation, or let's say classification of settlements, it's much easier to understand. Now, urban local bodies, basically your local bodies, or let's say your municipal administration, or bodies constituted by the government or some authority who are going to look after the planning, the development, and administration in a particular area. So if we see in Indian context, we have particularly three types of local bodies, urban local bodies, or three categories. So one is your municipal corporations, which work at much larger urban areas, or let's say for your cities. You have municipalities or municipal councils that works at a smaller urban area or town, and Nagar Panchayat. So as per the census of India, Nagar Panchayats are your urban local bodies that are formed to deal with areas in transition. Transition from where to where? Transition from your rural to urban areas. So of course, these areas are not going to transform or transit in one day or overnight. It is a very long process. But where in terms of data, let's say, or through statistics, etc., and analysis, it is much easier to understand that which of the particular areas is eventually going to grow and develop into a urban area or a larger area. Right? So these areas which are in transition have Nagar Panchayats. Then coming to land use. Now I'm sure you all know this, that what is land use? Now, if we break this word, right? What use am I putting the land to? So now this is not only particularly for land, but also your buildings. So it could be the entire site, or it could be a part of the site. It could be the entire building, let's say, or a part of the building, which is put to some particular use. That is what land use is. Okay, now what kind of uses am I putting into? So there are different categories of land use. What all categories have we seen or have we known since college, let's say? Residential use, commercial use, recreational, public, semi-public, right? So that is the category of land use which is being implemented or which is in action. Then coming to land use zones. So when you have a particular land use, right? Land use zones are a subcategory of that broader zone. So now here, if you look at this legend, So this is the master plan for your Hyderabad Urban Development Authority. If you look at the land use, here I see residential use zone. I hope it is legible to all. Right here you see residential use zone 1. Or under residential use zone, you see these subcategories of zone 1, zone 2, zone 3. Or let's say under manufacturing zone. So under the land use of manufacturing, I see two different zones, that is manufacturing use and worker center. Or for public, semi-public zone, we have public, semi-public facilities, public utilities and amenities. So these are the categories or the subcategories of land use zones that are used for your planning. Then coming to planning area or planning boundary. Now, what do we understand by a boundary? Can anybody tell me? Is everybody comfortable with Hindi also? Is there anybody who does not understand Hindi? Okay, so I will use a mix of both English as well as Hindi. Fine. So what do we understand by a boundary? Is some delineated area or some limit, correct? So for a particular planning area, now within this, let's say if this is my area, within this area is what I have to plan. So can I say this is my planning boundary or my planning limit, right? Now, in some cases, it is coherent or let's say in cohesion with what the city administration boundary is. In some cases, it may not be. Okay, it varies from plan to plan, area to area. So now if you again look at this legend over here, right, you see this black dotted dash line called as municipal limit, which is completely marked here, right? As look at the cursor that is moving. So it is marked here as the municipal limit. So for this master plan that you see on screen here, the municipal limit is my planning area or my planning boundary in this case. Okay, the extent of the jurisdiction of that particular authority is shown. Fine. जितना एरिया है या फिर जितना एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन का एरिया है उतना एरिया में जब प्लानिंग करोगे और या फिर उतने एरिया का लिमिट लेके प्लानिंग करोगे, दैट इज योर प्लानिंग एरिया और प्लानिंग बाउंड्री. Then coming to unauthorized development means what? Where construction or development of any type has taken place without proper permission, or suppose if it was not meant to be there as per the master plan or as per the plan of that area, right? In that case, if the development has happened other than that also, that is what is unauthorized development. Means what? जो development without permission हुआ है या फिर जो development master plan के हिसाब से नहीं हुआ है, that is what your unauthorized development stands for. Coming to your urban fringe, peri-urban areas. Now, let's say you have a city, you have some metro city, etc., or an urban area. At the edge, or let's say towards the administrative boundary, or where the metro area or the urban area has its limits, not necessarily always, but where you see that transition from that urban area to the rural area. So that periphery or that transition space is known as your peri-urban area, which is usually towards the edges or the boundaries of your urban area. Fine. So let's say at the city limits or the outskirts of your city, right? I'm sure all of you have traveled towards the outskirts of your cities or across your cities. Is your city completely urbanized right from the center towards the end of the city, or let's say the periphery of the city? Yes. Are your cities completely urbanized that way? Now, let's say as you move away from the city center towards the periphery, what do you see? There is still some development happening. It's not completely urbanized. Some areas are agriculture uh, based, correct? So that transition where you see mix of urban areas plus agricultural use is urban fringe or peri-urban areas. Coming to urban sprawl again is more of an uncontrolled expansion where there is a haphazard development that takes place in a city. Uncontrolled haphazard development which spreads towards the edges of the city is your urban sprawl. Now, what is the difference between urban sprawl and urban fringe? So main difference is that the sprawl is an expansion of urban area into the fringe, right? Whereas fringe is more of the transition zone. So urban sprawl is happening within the urban fringe. Is it clear? So let's say this is the urban fringe or the boundary, correct? And my sprawl that is happening towards this direction within this area. So can I say the urban sprawl is happening in the urban fringe? Yes? Yes, not necessary that the sprawl is going to limit to the boundary. It could go beyond the boundary as well. And the same goes for your peri-urban areas also. So let's say, now tell me one thing, okay? Let's assume that this is your administrative boundary. So is there going to be a sharp distinction of your development characteristics within this area and this area? There is going to be some sort of overlaps, right? But as I move away from the city center towards the edges, I call that area as an urban fringe, correct? And where is my sprawl happening? It is happening away from the city center. And that is why I say that your urban sprawl, that uncontrolled expansion or haphazard development can also happen in your fringe areas. So let's say even if this would also be a part of fringe area where it is a transition from your urban to agriculture or in between space, right? So again, urban sprawl can happen there as well. Let's take Harshita's question, that is peri-urban area same as suburban? Sort of, but suburban area or suburban zone is usually within the administrative limits. And yes, it is towards the periphery, but peri-urban zone or peri-urban area can also be uh, outside of the administrative boundary. Okay. Then coming to satellite towns. Now, can you all tell me that what is the natural satellite of Earth? Yes, the moon. So let's say you have your Earth, you have your moon over here. So there is some interdependency between the Earth and the moon. Are you all aware that the high tides and the low tides that are formed in your seas and oceans are because of the gravitational forces of the moon? There is some interdependency between the Earth and the Moon. All of us agree with that. Same is the concept for a satellite town where you have a larger settlement or a large, let's say, metropolitan area, right? And you have a smaller town that is located nearby to it outside its administrative boundary. This small town has its separate administrative boundary. Your metropolitan or large town has separate uh, administrative boundary. But there is an interdependency of this small town on the larger town. For, let's say, people traveling to this place for their jobs, employments, or going to college, coming back, etc. Right? So that interdependency is there. Now, if you take in India the example, Delhi and its surrounding cities, let's say Ghaziabad, Noida, Gurgaon, there is some interdependency and hence these could be called as your satellite town. Other than that, Navi Mumbai or Salt Lake City or let's say Ghaziabad for the NCR region act as your satellite towns. Okay. Then coming to counter magnet. Now, what do we understand by counter and magnet? What does a magnet do? It pulls ion towards it, correct? Now, but here it has to act as a counter to something. So, where we see large cities or where you have larger developments, and in order to lower the pressure on these larger cities, towns around it are developed, which will attract people or population from here to come and settle to these smaller settlements or towns. So counter magnet is a location or area that is developed to attract population and economic activities away from the larger urban center. So in case of NCR region, Kota, Hisar, Patiala, Bareilly, Gwalior as well act or have been developed as counter magnets to attract or lower the pressure from the NCR region. Coming to new towns, usually built from scratch, more of self-contained urban areas designed for specific population and size. Coming to twin cities, where the cities have their separate administrative setups. There is no administrative interdependency. However, whatever common resources are there, let's say some economic resources or there could be some infrastructure that would be shared between the two cities. The size of these cities, if you see, like let's say what we saw in satellite towns, one was a large city and the other one was a smaller city. Whereas in case of twin cities, how you have twin children, right? Both are of the same size, same age. Similar is with twin cities, both in terms of administrative setup are almost equal or similar in size. Okay. Now, I'm sure a lot of you are confused or wondering what is the difference between all these three, four. So, if we see counter magnets are primarily designed or planned to attract population from another place. New towns are completely built for being self-sufficient. Satellite towns are more for interdependency. So counter magnets not necessarily will have your interdependency. Fine. And twin cities, they're located close to each other and have shared infrastructure, but separate administrative setups. So purpose of your counter magnets is to relieve pressure from an overpopulated city, redistribute it somewhere. Whereas for satellite town, it's to support the larger city and create that particular interdependency. So you have examples of Navi Mumbai, you have Dharuhera near Delhi, which was planned as a new town. Ghaziabad acts more like a satellite town. And for example of twin cities, we've just seen Pune and Pimpri Chinchwad. Along with that, you have Hyderabad and Sikandrabad as well. So I hope this is clear for all of you. In case of counter magnets, development of Noida and then Greater Noida could also be regarded as, yes, counter magnets to NCR. Okay, now let us have a look at classification of urban settlements. Now, what are defined as urban areas as per your census is all places which have a municipality, corporation, municipal corporation, or a cantonment board, or a notified town area is an urban area as per the census of India. Plus, other than that, in case, other than that criteria, where an area has a minimum population of 5,000, at least 75% of the male population is working in non-agricultural pursuits, doing non-agricultural activity, and density of population is at least 400 persons per square kilometer. Then that area will also be called as an urban area if it fulfills all these three criteria. Okay. So if let's say the population is 5,000, there is a population density of 400% per square kilometer, but only 50% of the male working population is doing non-agricultural work. In that case, it will not be classified under your urban area. Okay. Now, if you see the urban-rural population divide as per your 2011 census, because your 2021 census is not out yet, 31% of the Indian population is urban, whereas 69% of the Indian population is still rural. Okay. Now, in terms of these urban settlements or urban areas, they can be classified as statutory towns and census towns. Now, what do you mean by statute, or what do we understand by statute? Can I say it is something under a law or by under the law that is being passed, or it is formed under the law? Yes, so what do we understand by statute? Statute is basically a law or an act. So statutory towns again are towns which are notified under a law, where you usually will find municipal corporations, municipalities, municipal committees that are formed under their respective municipal acts that are there. And for statutory towns with population of more than 1 lakh, these are usually categorized as cities. And other than that, the rest of them are your census towns, where again, the definition of 5,000, 75%, and 400% per square kilometer would apply over here. Okay. Now, if we see as of your 2011, we had 4,041 statutory towns in India and 3,892 census towns in India. So there is a drastic increase with respect to the census towns that has been seen from 2001 to 2011. Along with that, as per the official Indian statistics, your cities are classified into 6 categories or 6 classes, where class 6 towns or cities or settlements, which are considered as class 6, have a population of less than 5,000. For population between 5,000 to 10,000 are classified as class 5 towns. Between 10 to 20,000 are class 4. between 20 to 50,000 population are class 3 towns. 50,000 to 1 lakh are your class 2 towns, and above 1 lakh are your class 1 towns. So this is being used in Maharashtra as well, where different municipal corporations, municipalities, nagar panchayats, etc., have been also defined as class 1, 2, 3, 4, etc. Okay, and in addition to that, areas or cities with more than 10 lakh population or more than 1 million population are your metro cities. So again, as per the URDPFI, we have another classification that is in terms of small towns, medium towns, large cities, metro cities, and megapolis. So small towns have a population of between 5 to 50,000, medium towns between 50,000 to 1 lakh, large cities 5 to 10 lakhs, metro cities 10 lakh to 1 crore, and megapolis more than 1 crore. Now, if we see roughly, we in terms of the Indian context, in as per the 2011 census, there have been around 53 cities. If we add up these 45, 5 and 3, there are 53 cities who have a population of more than 10 lakh, right? So those are your metro cities, metro city 1, 2 and megapolis. Okay, let's try a few questions from the previous year papers. You all can put your answers in the chat box. The number of towns in India with a population of 1 million or more as per census 2011 was 53, right? Level of urbanization in India as per census 2011 is closest to correct. It is your 31%. Rest 69 is your rural population, right? Now, along with that, there are a few more terms, terminologies, which are more or less related to these urban settlements or a part of these classifications. That is your outgrowth, urban agglomeration, and conurbation. So let's take a look at those as well. Now, outgrowths are basically what? Where you have a statutory town or a city or let's say a town or small settlement. It has its own jurisdiction, etc. And outside its statutory limits, there is a small unit or a small development that takes place, which has all the urban features. Let's say pakka roads, well-drained layout, proper drainage, sanitation facilities, everything that is there, but it is outside the statutory limits. So this outgrowth or this settlement can be called as an outgrowth of this city or town. Okay, so for example, where you have railway colonies that are on the outskirt of a city or large university campuses, right? So where they are outside the jurisdiction of that particular city, but have all urban features, all infrastructure and amenities, is an outgrowth. Coming to the next one, that is urban agglomeration. Now, what do we understand by agglomeration? Anybody? Can I say agglomeration is coming together of 2-3 units or 2-3 entities? Yes. Do all of you agree? Amalgamation, yes, another word for it. So coming together of two, three units, two, three areas. So what is an agglomeration? Basically, now this is your census definition that I'm uh, going to be discussing. But the main crux is that it is coming together of two, three areas and forming one unit. Okay. Now, as per the census, it says it is a continuous urban spread consisting of the town and its outgrowth. So, when you have a town, its outgrowth, and when I consider this as one area, I will call that as your urban agglomeration. Now, in which case is it acceptable? So, there are three options, permutation combinations, where you have a city or a town and its continuous outgrowth that is there, which is of course outside its statutory limit. You consider that as one unit. This is one, this could be called as an urban agglomeration, or where you have two or more towns. So let's say there are two towns, their outgrowths, where you consider now this entire area as one unit. Can I say that is one urban agglomeration? Or you can have, let's say, one large city, smaller towns, their outgrowths, or outgrowths could also not be there, that is okay. And this entire portion or this parcel of area considered as one unit is what your agglomeration is. Now, for that, the conditions are also that the core town, now in this case, can I say this larger town or larger city is the core town, right? And here, at least the core town or at least one of the towns has to be a statutory town. So it could be, let's say this is a statutory town, these could be census towns, and that is okay. Or this could be a census town, statutory town, this could be a census town, that is also okay. But one has to be a statutory town. And the population, minimum population has to be of 20,000. It should not be less than 20,000. So you have your cities like Mumbai, Delhi, Kolkata, all of these being a part of agglomerations. Along with that, if we see at a larger context, right, there is something called as conurbation, where again, conurbation is also the amalgamation or coming together of smaller settlements or various settlements of different sizes and forming one unit. But difference between agglomeration and conurbation is that conurbation is at a much, much larger scale. So as per URDPF, it says that the population should be more than 5 crore. And then we will consider it as a conurbation. So you have examples of your Delhi NCR region, which can be considered as a conurbation. Your Mumbai metropolitan region, right, which consists of those various districts and various municipal corporations coming together to form that larger region. So I hope the difference between conurbation and urban agglomeration is clear to all of you. Yes? Okay. Moving on to the next part, that is scope, purpose, and hierarchy of various plans. Let us understand that. Okay, just a minute. Gauri, what part have you not understood? You can just unmute and let me know.
So basically, my microphone was not working, so I couldn't hear what you explained.
Okay, I will take it at towards the end then. Okay.
Sure, sure.
Yeah. Okay. So now I'm sure as architects or as planners or even as civil engineers, you all have worked at some various scales. Okay. But for planning, if you see, primarily there are different scales of planning or different scales of plan or hierarchy of plans that are usually utilized or put in place. So you have your perspective plan, regional plan, development plan, and local area plan. Now, what is the difference? Let's look at them one by one. So if you see perspective plans, these are at a much larger scale. Now, as you go down, right, from perspective plan towards local area plan, the scale size decreases and the level of detailing increases. So perspective plans are more at your, let's say, policy level, which apply towards, let's say, the entire state in some cases, or maybe two states together. It depends. Okay. So perspective plan now again, it's a long-term plan, 20, 30 years. For example, let's say if there is a land utilization policy, this can be considered as a part of my perspective plan. Fine. So now let us assume for a minute that maybe there are these two states that are there. So in some cases, the perspective plan could be only for a single state or it could be for two states. Now, in this case, let us assume that there is a perspective plan that is for these two states, fine, where it is you're discussing more at a policy level, more at a conceptual level, more in terms of your aims or how you see the development, the future development, right? Now, as you move to a deeper level, more in depth, you come to a regional plan. Now, here, regional plans again are for a particular specified region. Now, let's say from a perspective plan, I can say that a regional plan I can create for this entire state. Fine, not necessary, it has to be the state boundary. Again, this is an example I'm taking, but try and understand the scale. Okay, at a much larger scale, but here it is more in detail in terms of what specifications are there, what types of regional resources are there, how do you utilize those. Now, another question I have is, tell me, can the regional plan be same for all the areas or all regions? Yes. So again, your regional plan, or let's say in terms of regional plan, it's never going to be the same for same for all the regions, right? It has to be curated based upon the regional resources that are there. Now, within a state also, you can have few different regions, and that is still okay. It could be for the entire state, or maybe for different, let's say, two districts put together, forming one regional plan, or in some cases, in some states, it is a regional plan for a district. So the particular administrative boundary of a district is taken up and a regional plan is prepared for that. So it completely varies from state to state in the Indian context. In terms of Maharashtra, for the MPSC exam that we are preparing, here your districts that are there, these have been divided into your different regions to prepare regional plans. So in Maharashtra, the regional plans are prepared for each individual districts. Okay. When now within that particular regional plan, when you have to detail out in terms of the development of different cities within that district, let's say, that is where we move towards your development plan. In some cases, in some states, for example, Delhi, it is interchangeably, the term is interchangeably used with master plan as well. So, what is it exactly? More detailed plan with respect to the development that is planned for that particular city or town, in terms of right from the infrastructure to, let's say now your metro is coming up, the land use planning, all of that is done in detail. And within a particular city, when I talk about a particular area, that is where the local area plan comes into picture. Now, in context of Maharashtra, we do not have local area plans as such, but this is equivalent to what the town planning schemes that are there in Maharashtra. Okay. So, uh, if you look at the overall hierarchical system, you have the perspective plan, then the regional plan. Below that, more detail is your development plan, local area plan, or let's say your town planning schemes in case of Maharashtra. Parallel to that, you could also have your special purpose plans. Now, special purpose plans primarily are with respect to what, let's say, for example, for some tourism place. Okay, let's say some city where tourism is the main economic driver. So there I could have a special tourism plan, a tourism plan which would also be a special purpose plan. Yes, your JNNURM, the development, the city development plans formed under JNNURM were also a part of your special purpose plan. Master plan, Javed, is parallel, or the term is used interchangeably with the term development plan. So here, development plan, or let's say master plan. Okay. And then you have annual plans where primarily it is more from the economic perspective, more from the investment perspective, in terms of how the fiscal management or the monetary management is going to be done for executing all uh, the schemes, or let's say the plans that have been proposed. Okay. Now, if we see, just to understand more in detail, for NCR region, let's say for the entire region, you have a regional plan. But when we come to Delhi, Delhi has a master plan. Now, here in Delhi, the word master plan is used, whereas let's say in the state of Maharashtra, it is the development plan. The word development plan is used. But if you look at the context, it is, or the contents, they are the same. Okay. I will take up the questions a little later. Let me just complete this. So for the NCR region, you have a regional plan. For the state of Delhi, or in this case now, somebody had this question, right? Uh, with respect to the state as well. Now, Delhi, state, city, if you see the size is small. So here you have the master plan for this entire city state. Okay. In terms of Maharashtra now, if you see, if you look at this is the regional plan for Nagpur, the district of Nagpur. Now, in Maharashtra, the regional plans are prepared as per the district, and it is not necessary that it has to be done as per districts, but this is done for easier administrative purposes. Now, if you look at this, the regional plan is talking about the basic regional resources, etc. If you just, we will zoom in and see the details later, the legends later. Now, within this, there is an area which is county. Now, if you look at this is the development plan for that, where what do you identify, or looking at the map, looking at the plan, what all do you think is being uh, shown in the plan? Primarily, it is the land use, the area, the administrative boundary. Yes. Coming to another case, again, the district of Satara, if you see here within the regional plan for district of Satara, they've highlighted, if you look at this, these are the various towns that are marked over here. Other than that, the rest of reservations, your green areas, green corridors, all of that has been marked. Now, within Satara district, there is a city called as Satara, where if you see, there is a development plan which is in detail. I hope you all are getting the difference between regional plan and development plan, the scales and the level of detail. And let's say when I have to detail out a particular area within this development plan or within this locality, that is where your town planning schemes come into picture. Okay, we are going to discuss them a lot more in detail in the coming lectures as per your MRTP Act primarily, because maximum questions are from your MRTP Act. So we are going to discuss as per the MRTP sections in detail. So I hope all of you have a clearer picture as to the differences in scale as well as what is called as what. Okay. Now coming to the last part, that is your evolution of planning legislation in India. So primarily from the exam perspective, it is more of pre-independence evolution that is asked many times. So if we see pre-independence, we had the Sanitary Commission Land Acquisition Act of 1984, which went on till your 2013. It was modified, and the Land Acquisition Rehabilitation Resettlement Act came in 2013. Fine. Then again, the event of Bombay plague leading to city improvement trusts being formed, Patrick Giri's visit to India, Bombay Town Planning Act, various acts that have happened pre-independence and post-independence. If you see, it is more about the new cities, new towns being built. For example, Chandigarh, Bhubaneswar. Along with that, the planning commission coming into picture, right? Where you have various 5-year plans that were being formulated. So this is a brief of your evolution of planning legislation from the exam perspective. Most important for us is this. Along with that, the Bombay Town Planning Act of 1954 and the Maharashtra Regional Town Planning Act of 1966. So let's have a detailed look at that. Now, if we see just a brief history, how did these planning legislations begin or where do they come from? So if you see around this period of 1900s, right? The 18th, 19th century, if you see, there is a spike in the urban population. There is an increase in migration from rural to urban areas, and hence that spike that we see in the Indian context, right? Now, here, if you see, because of that sudden spike or sudden increase in the population in urban areas, there was a lot of pressure on the infrastructure that was existing in these urban areas. Now, let's say if you have less infrastructure and you have more number of people, what is going to happen? There will be unhealthy conditions, poor sanitary conditions that are going to be created, right? And that led to formation of many diseases, uh, out outbreaks of diseases, etc. And catering to that, the first sanitary commission was formed. Okay. Along with that, if you see now, this sanitary commission primarily worked more upon how can the sanitation system within that particular settlement or the city be improved. It was, the focus was more on that. After that, just discussed the Land Acquisition Act that came into being. This was primarily made for acquisition of land in Bengal, right? For more of development and etc. And that when this act went on till 2013 that we see. Then along with that, we had improvement acts, city improvement acts, where we had Bombay Improvement, Mysore and Calcutta Improvement Acts that came up one after the other. So again, the idea behind these improvement acts was also the same, that is to more or less improve the living conditions. Now, this had happened because of the plagues, the outbreak of plagues that took place. Most important from our perspective is the visit of Sir Patrick Geddes in India, which led to the formation of the Bombay Town Planning Act in 1950. So, if you see, Bombay Town Planning Act of 1915 is the first legislation, first act, or first bylaw for town planning schemes in India. So, if there is a question in the exam that which of the following is the first legislation with respect to town planning in India, the answer will not be Bombay Improvement Act or Calcutta Improvement Act. The answer is Bombay Town Planning Act of 1950. And of course, after the 1915 Act, then you had the Uttar Pradesh Town Planning Act, Madras Town Planning Act coming into picture, right? The Bombay Town Planning Act of 1915 was later modified in 54, which eventually, again, after the 54 Act got modified, it was the MRTP or the Maharashtra Regional Town Planning Act that came into being. Now, let us just quickly go through the details of that, more important for us from the exam perspective. So, if you see in this period of 1896-97, the Bombay plague, the outbreak of this led to many deaths, etc., which led to the formation of your city improvement trusts. What we had discussed here, right? The Bombay Improvement Act, in order to, again, it was focusing more on the sanitary conditions like the sanitary commission, fine, or very less on the infrastructure. Eventually, when Sir Patrick Geddes visited India in the period of 1914 to 24, he traveled across various cities, right from Bombay to Baroda to even Madras, right? That is where he gave this suggestion for having more of comprehensive planning for cities. And that is where the Bombay Town Planning Act of 1915 came into picture. So, like I said earlier, the first town planning legislation in India. Now, that back then you did not have the state of Maharashtra. It was Bombay province, where you had parts of Gujarat also. The today's day state of Gujarat, some parts of it were a part of it, the Bombay province as well. So now here, what was the kind of planning that was happening? Or what was the idea behind this Bombay Town Planning Act of 1915? It was again more to provide your infrastructure, your physical infrastructure like electricity, roads, water supply. But this was not compulsory. It was a voluntary scheme through town planning. So it was to develop parts of the city through town planning schemes. Now, let's say if this is my entire province or this is my city, I am going to develop or let's say have this town planning act enacted in smaller parts of the city, right? What was the resultant of this? It led to piecemeal development where, let's say I've developed this area as per the town planning scheme. There is no context or connection with the surrounding area. So everything is getting developed in isolation. There is no context, no connection with each other, which was a major drawback of the 1915 scheme. That is when they realized that rather than having that piecemeal development, why not have a larger perspective development? And this is the period where, if you see 1954, just before that we had got our independence. From 1951, the Planning Commission had come up with the 5-year plans, which primarily spoke of planned development for entire city as a whole. So that, taking inspiration from these 5-year plans, the first 5-year plan, the provision for preparing development plan for that entire city. So again, first, what did we see? In 1915 only, parts were being developed under town planning scheme. Now under 1954, this entire region, or rather the entire jurisdiction of that particular city, is now being developed as one whole. So if you see now, usually what we've seen in the hierarchy is, first is your regional plan, development plan, and then a part of it as town planning or local area plan, right? But here, if you see, first came your town planning, okay, then came your development plans as per the 1915 and 54 Act. And in this case, again, now, if you see, the 1915 Act was more of voluntary, it was not compulsory, but the 54 Acts were made mandatory for the planning authority to prepare development plan for the area within their jurisdiction. Clear? However, now they have planned till here, fine. This is my jurisdiction. I have planned within that jurisdiction for my entire area. But now this is the period where India's industrialization is happening. India is growing. There is a lot of rural to urban migration. Your cities are growing, right? W- Till here, I have control. What is happening to these areas? What is happening to the areas between these urban, rural, or completely agricultural land parcels? So development started happening outside the city limits also. There was no control on that development which is happening outside your jurisdiction, right? This time again, to counter that, comprehensive development of urban and rural areas came into picture, looking at more larger scales. Now here we are talking about regional levels, right? And this is the period, again, in 1960, the partition of Bombay province happens. Maharashtra state is formed, Gujarat state is formed. And in 1966, the MRTP Act, the Maharashtra Regional Town Planning Act, is enacted, primarily with the objective to cater to the regional development plus new town development. Okay. Now you will say, okay, why not development plans and town planning scheme? Because they were already a part, right? That has been carried forward and already added into the MRTP Act of 1966. I hope everybody's clear with this. So just to summarize, if you see, if this is my city, the 1915 Act is catering to these smaller towns, smaller localities. My 1954 Act is catering to the entire jurisdiction. And let's say if there is maybe another settlement here, the 66 Act is catering to all the entire region as a whole. Clear, everybody? Okay, let's try these questions. Which of the following acts enabled the planning authorities to undertake town planning schemes for the first time in Maharashtra? Correct. That is the Bombay Town Planning Act of 1915. So another question from the 22 examination that happened recently. In the Bombay province, due to the need of providing public facilities such as water, roads, etc., the Bombay Town Planning Act was enacted in the year correct. That is 1915. Option 3. Right? So, with that, we come to an end for today's session. But there is one more thing that I want to discuss. Just a minute. And what I want all of you to do, or rather explore, I will just share my screen. Okay, is the screen visible? Yes, okay. So you have to go to the website of DTP, Directorate of Town Planning of Maharashtra. You can just Google DTP Maharashtra. Fine. Now, once you come over here, under this plans section, right? Here you will see these different districts. Now, like I said, that for the case of Maharashtra, different districts have their different regional plans, right? Now, let's take the case of Amravati. If I click on Amravati, now this takes some time to load, but here you can, if you just scroll down, you get to see the regional plan, the development plan of various areas. Now, few areas don't have town planning schemes yet. However, what I want you to do is go back today and explore these. Just try and understand these maps. Okay, now in this case, let's say this is not that legible. Let's take some other example. Mm, okay. So we'll go to the regional plan of Satara district. So if you look at this here, right? Uh, Try and understand what is being spoken about. Now you have the district boundary, the regional boundary is again coinciding with your district boundary. Here there is another region, that is Mahabaleshwar Panchgani region. Now why is that so? Because this is a eco-sensitive zone. Then you have different municipalities, you have Nagar Panchayats within this region. Those are marked. There are some growth centers. For example, if you see this Maswad, right? This place marked as a growth center. You have eco-sensitive villages that have been marked. There are different boundaries. Your municipal boundary, Nagar Panchayat has a different boundary. Urban rural complex boundaries, right? Now these have been marked. Now you have MIDC or industrial development areas. So areas for that. Now if you look at this purple dot, proposed MIDC. Here is another proposed MIDC, right? So just explore the regional plan. For the same region, take another development plan, explore that, try and understand what is it talking about. Okay, now if you see there is some tiger project boundary that they have marked. Now, if you see, this is again your Mahabaleshwar Panchgani region that has been marked separately, being a eco-sensitive zone. Now, if I go to the legend over here, right, Mahabaleshwar Panchgani buffer area, etc., is marked, plus the entire regional boundary for that is marked separately, being a eco-sensitive zone. So for that, there would be another detailed plan that would be made. Okay, so sugar factories, what are Gauthan areas, so smaller villages, village settlements, right, which are more in the transition phase. those have been marked. Your water bodies, etc., places of interest, port areas which are there, all of that has been marked. Okay, government forest area, agricultural area, etc. Just what I want you to basically do is just get a hang of it so that when we are discussing the sections of MRTP Act in terms of regional plan, etc., there you would have a better idea. Okay, now we've seen the regional plan. Let's go to the development plan that has been sanctioned. Now, sometimes it takes time to load the image. Okay, do we see any eco-sensitive zone, anything over here? No. Directly now we are coming to the municipal limits. So if you remember in the regional plan, we had seen those municipal limits that were being marked. Now one of those is picked and detailed out, right? Or for that one development plan for that particular city is being prepared. So here now you have your detailed land use zones, residential, public, semi-public, commercial, all of that being mentioned over here. Fine. Within that also now here you see some uh, modifications sanctioned by government for TPS, means TP scheme, town planning scheme, is being indicated. What are the reserved public sites, existing amenities? Are you all getting the hang of it or understanding? Yes, are you all understanding or no? Yes, so what I want you to do is go back and explore the regional plans, town planning schemes if you find any, as well as the development plans on the website of website of the DTP Maharashtra. Okay, so do we have any questions? Yes, anybody, any questions?
Hello, am I
Yes,
audible? Yeah.
yes.
I would like to know about the professors which you all have for all the other subjects. Can we just have a quick some details about them and how are you supposed to cover the entire syllabus for this exam?
Okay, so just a minute. Let me just share my screen. Okay. So if you just take a look at the previous paper analysis, right from 2012 to 2022, majority of your questions are from the MRTP Act. After that, you have sections of valuation, building permission. Now, again, in 2022, the paper exam syllabus had changed. However, the pattern still remains the same. That is, MRTP Act is the Bible. Okay, take for 2018, you have 28 questions. Same goes for 2022, you have around 27 questions. Now, 22, the paper syllabus has completely changed. right? And if you look at the detailed analysis of the 22 paper, right? Here you have roughly, let's say, 4 questions from current events, 5 from government schemes, 3 from your policies, theories of planning, major parts, regional plan, development plan. All of these are your MRTP. Okay, 4 questions, 8 questions. Town planning schemes, 8 questions. Local area plan, 3. UDCP are basically the Unified Development Control Regulations for Maharashtra state, which are applicable pan Maharashtra now, right? So these again are very, very important. After that, if you see development charges, again, this is also a part of your MRTP Act. Transportation planning, environment, 4, 5 questions here and there. Acts and rules, if you see, for the MRTP rules, you have 2 questions, planning evolution of legislation 1. All of these acts, 1 to 2 questions. Land acquisition, very, very important, 8 questions. And overall, if you see all valuation topics put together, that is 5 plus 2, 3, 4, so around 14 questions from valuation. So if you see, the primary focus is to finish your MRTP Act, which is, again, I'm sure you must have realized looking at the analysis as well, that this is the Bible, and without MRTP, uh, it's difficult to clear the exam,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
So if you say for MRTP, where you have around 28 to 30 questions, here itself you are securing 60 marks out of 200. Next in line is your valuation and UDCPR plus land acquisition. These are the priority topics that we will be covering one by one. So, of course, the first priority is the MRTP Act, and then these. After that, we will be moving on to these topics where you have questions of either 4 or 3 questions from each of them. And the last would be your policies, acts and rules, and RTI, RTS, where you have one question from each. Okay. So that
Okay.
is
Got
how
it.
the classes are going to be proceeding.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. And all
Okay.
the faculty is experienced faculty who have also cleared various government examinations. So, yes, I hope that answers your question.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
And what about the tests?
So the tests will also be conducted as per the topics. So once, let's say, a major chunk, or let's say once MRTP is done, then the test for MRTP.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Got
Okay.
it. Yeah. Thanks.
Yes. Okay. Javed, how much time it takes to prepare master plan for a city in general? We will see that in the when we are discussing development plan, we will look at that. I will not answer it right now. Okay, will you also cover Maharashtra Acts in the lecture? Yes, everything that is in the syllabus, which is not a part of the syllabus, I will not be covering that. Only what is there in the syllabus and demand of the exam. So roughly it would take, see, these portions have a major weightage, so assume that you would roughly require 30 to 45 days for these topics, and then the remaining for these. So let's assume around 60 days is more than enough to cover your entire portion thoroughly. Okay? Yes, any more doubts, any more queries? Okay, in case if you have further doubts regarding the course or anything, you can get in touch on this number 76317 66140. I'll just write it down over here. Okay. 76317 66140. You can get in touch for more details on this number. Ma'am, I'm facility and service planning. I'm eligible to this. Sorry, I didn't understand, Bhargav. Can you just unmute and talk?
हेलो
आप
गुड इवनिंग
अनम्यूट भी कर सकते हैं हाँ बोलिए
मैम एक्चुअली graduated from facilities and service planning.
Okay.
Can I eligible to this course? It is related to planning, no? I am related to building services planning.
No, actually, if you see the notification, they've clearly mentioned B plan or your BTech in civil engineering, civil and infrastructure engineering, or architecture. So even some students who are graduates of geography and done masters in planning are not eligible in this case. So I think likewise it would be for you as well. Okay. Any more questions, queries, anybody?
Hi, Gauri here.
Yeah, hi.
So basically, I don't know this question is relevant here or not, but then while filling the exam form, in the location, I didn't get any location option. It was only none,
Yes, so
none. It was
select
there.
none. Select
Huh.
none for that. Based on
Okay.
whatever address you've put, it is automatically going to be allotted to you, the exam center. So everybody is getting the option of none only. Okay. So
So it
select
will
that
be
none.
allotted by them only. So we won't
Yes.
get any option to select the location from our side.
No, no. So whatever address you've given, right?
Huh.
Yes. So where are you from?
I'm from Chandrapur, but then right now I'm staying in Pune. So according to Aadhaar card address, I gave that because this is my temporary address where I'm living right now. So I gave permanent address in the form.
So I think they
So
have a correspondence address also that they're asking, right?
okay,
So
huh,
basically, based on what address you fill up in the form, they are going
huh.
to automatically allocate to you. So
We
you
can't
have to,
change the. We can't ask for change once the location is
you can
allotted.
modify. No, no. Once your admit card is out, no, you can't.
Okay,
Yes,
I can modify now if
you can
possible.
modify your address, but
Okay.
I'm not very sure how much now would it be helpful. But you can try modifying the address and
Mm-hmm.
locking your profile. Okay.
Okay.
Ma'am, I have interacted with MPSC officials. They said that they will notify later to select the city. They haven't yet released the city names, so they will notify it
Right.
later.
So usually they directly it is allotted based on what you put most of the time based on your address.
But ma'am, I don't have the Maharashtra address. I am from Madhya Pradesh. So how will they allot me the city?
So probably either the closest to your place, whichever one is coming, or in case if they are actually saying that they will open up for the city center, they might this time. But if you see previously, this was not the case. So yes, let's see. Okay.